Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for March 21st, 2018, and we are starting at 7:06 p.m. I apologize for the late start, but we are in progress right now. Which brings us to number 2, are there any urgent items being brought forward by any of the councillors?
Your Worship, you don't want questions between councillors,
I don't think so, no. So then I'm looking for, admin. I always do that, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have one item to add. If we could add it under 7.1 and then shift the rest of the items in 7 down. The item is winter road maintenance policy.
Thank you. And there are no other things?
That is it, Your Worship.
I'll move the agenda as amended, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. I don't believe we have any presentations or recognitions tonight, and I don't believe we have any delegations, which brings us to item 5.1, confirmation of the February 22nd, 2018 special council meeting minutes.
So move, Your Worship.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Cox. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. 5.2, minutes of the March 7th, 2018 regular council meeting.
I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? Motion is carried.
The agenda?
Yeah, as amended.
Yeah, we did. I guess so.
It's okay. Item 6, I don't believe we have any tabled items, which takes us to 7 items from administration. 7.1, which is the one we added tonight, the snow removal policy. Thank you. And Mark and Craig are coming forward. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. We're here tonight to bring forward some housekeeping amendments to our brand-new snow policy. After we looked at a few things and what we were doing out in the field, we wanted to clarify a few changes, mainly adding some definitions, specifically around rutting, which has been a major issue in town recently that we noticed that we missed. Also talked about some of the other things that we do called snow blading, where we just push, we fill in the ruts. So we want to get that definition there. And then we also had some, a few other minor points related to clarity about snow removal. We had in there that the 100 centimeters, which Councillor Cobra brought out about last time about being there, we added some definition in there. What we found is, looking at other communities and also our own experiences, when we get into the situation where we have compacted ice of over 20 centimeters, when it starts to melt, those become very impactful very quickly. And when that happens, we have to react, and we can't just act on a case-by-case basis, so we end up having to pull into, and that's kind of what we've been doing recently here. So, and there's also the snow and ice, where they're starting to, we had to remove some snow and ice due to drainages in the local residents, so we do removal. So just some clarity around some of the, when we do exactly removals. And also, what we were finding recently is, as we get this snowfall melt cycle, the snow was melting, getting ice, snow, melt, ice, and we weren't able to actually pull the material into the ruts because it was just all ice. And so when we started doing that, we started ripping up and making even worse. So we wanted to have some ability to have in this that we can actually go and do some removals. We also clarified what an extreme event is, just give us some more clarity and about these reserves, specifically around using that reserve that was approved by last council. And then the final thing was in the guidance that we would add in an annual review. The fact that every year the weather's a little bit different and we find new things. Like this year we didn't get the Chinook to warm up really high, and we got kind of this warm up and then 0, 1 degree, 1 degree. So we wanted to have that ability to go in here and then make additional recommended and deletions into the program. that's kind of our prepared statements in terms of overall view of that. If you have any questions, me and Craig are more than happy to answer.
Councillor Cox.
Hi. Just wondering on the priority route map on the back that we didn't do the Westmount Drive or the Wildflower Road. I thought we were updating them.
They were updated on the original, they were updated, this map is incorrect.
So what color?
They actually should be green,
Green?
yeah.
Thank you. And that's Westmount Drive and Wildflower Road?
Yes, Wildflower Road up to the entrance to.
Yep.
Yep.
And, Waddy Lane also is in yellow, should be
Oh.
in yellow, but they were on the one that was passed back in early March.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox.
I have another.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, carry on.
I want to talk about your snow blading. I just want to know why it gets done. I personally think it's a waste of time. I know it's been done on close to my house a couple of times, and it lasts for 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like they fill it in, and by the time they're gone, it's now a rut again because it's soft. Like they're filling it in with soft snow, and so it just sinks back down. So to me, it seems like you're wasting your time.
The end, it's also because it's trying to do, sometimes they'll use that when we get in differential rutting, not just necessarily ruts all the way along, but we'll get some soft spots, so they'll end up blading that out and getting that out without actually physically going in there with our snow blower and taking and loading that dirt, the snow out, right? If we didn't do the blading, we actually had to go there and basically after windrow and take it all out and we end up doing a removal where we were trying not to, right? All these procedures and processes are a learning experience. We're trying our best. In certain environments, that's going to work depending on the temperature. If we get it gets put in there and it starts to freeze up at night, it will work. If it sometimes it won't, right?
Right.
But not all. We try our best, I guess, is our cruise.
Okay. Thanks.
Does, just if I could add to that, does the snow blading help to reduce the height of the snow and ice compared to sidewalks of people's properties too? Is that one of the reasons you might do that, to lower the actual height of ice and snow on the road?
It's more geared to sort of groom it,
Okay.
to try to level it out and push everything back in,
Okay, thank you.
so.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. I have had a number of questions from constituents who are asking me if we have ever looked at the bus routes that are currently within the town from Golden Hills and Holy Cross Collegiate, and whether or not we plow based on where the buses are going in the city, in the town, sorry.
Just recently, we've been dealing with both the school divisions to try to get what their actual bus routes are. Basically what we have is the bus stops. So we're progressing, trying to go down that route to find exactly how they get to their stops and which routes they go.
But in generally speaking, we cover most of those routes off through our policy because we do the collector roads.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, the buses will run down the collector roads versus local roads in general, right? There's some routes that will, for their own efficiency on the busing system, which we have no control over, will go off of collector routes. But so those are the ones that are probably not covered off by the policy.
So would it be advantageous at this point to maybe sit down with both school boards and look at the roads that they're using? Because it's made such a mess this year when you're having big buses go down roads with regular traffic. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, we've started our initial conversations with them to get the stops, and then from there, we're gonna try to progress that a little bit further to actually get their routes. The routes do slightly change. For example, we had, this afternoon, we had a question about a route and that the bus traveled, but it really had no indication, we had no indication where that route was in comparison to where the stops are.
Mm-hmm.
So we're discussing that right now with Southland and hopefully get an answer back tomorrow. Once we can get the routes, that will make it a little bit easier for us to try to prioritize.
I think that's a really good idea in terms of school safety with the children and with getting multiple use traffic down an area. Some people are commenting that they haven't seen a snowplow all year, as you know, but now we've changed that, so we can definitely pat ourselves, or pat you on the back for getting out there and being proactive.
And if I could just pat the crew on the back.
The
because
crew.
they-
Thank you.
Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. I'm glad to see the rutting issue brought to light and understand the effort, but in worst, and this is a worst-case scenario this winter, obviously, and the ruts are bad. Has there been any consideration for actually talking removal as a result of the depth of the rut? And especially when one considers that, and this is happening frequently, even as we speak, the vehicle gets into the two ruts and they can't get out. It's just, they're stuck there. So you're talking about a rut of probably 7 or 8 inches with some of these vehicles, 6 to 8 inches. Normal vehicles not going to move out of there. So is there any depth that you were talking about or thinking about that would result in removal?
Basically, that's where we looked at some of the other standards, and basically this 8.5 inches, 8 inches, and
Jeez, that's high.
our policy right now is it's impassable if it's 8 inches, because that's the clearance of our emergency vehicles. We are currently removing. We started off with Aspen because there were quite a few ruts that were in that 6 to 8 inches, and we did today. We just did something in Ranch where we're pulling out over a foot depth of ice.
Jeez.
So those are the kind of things that we're encountering today. So we are running into those big areas, and we're focusing currently on our roads and making sure that the roads are the primary. Now, there is some concerns that we've heard about lanes. However, right now, all our crews and all our efforts is done on the roads, making sure you have at least one access into your property. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Any other comments or questions from council? Jen, just for clarification, do we just accept this, or are we looking for a motion?
You would have to adopt the amendments to the policy.
So, thank you, Jen. We're looking for a motion to adopt the amendments to the town policy. Councillor Corbeil? Oh, sorry, Councillor Peterson.
You go ahead.
I move that we, sorry, to accept the winter road maintenance policy with its amendments.
Do you want a policy number, or are you okay with that?
A policy number would be good.
Thank you.
Policy number 3201.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Councillor Corbeil, for that motion.
I know, I thought it was that after.
We're moving on to 7.2, the 2018 Census and Citizen Survey, and Ms. Sawatsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're bringing this forward to council this evening because council budgeted to do a census and citizen survey this year. A census typically takes place between April 1st and June 30th of each year. But council does have to set a census date, and that date is the date when we ask everyone about questions. So that would be the dates. For instance, we would say on April 1st, how many people lived at this residence? So we need to set a date for that. And then we also want to know if council would like to move forward with the citizen survey this year. We're not going to talk about questions this evening. We've included information in the package for council to review, and so that we can discuss the questions council can discuss questions if they like, sorry. But I hadn't planned on discussing questions this evening. And we're scheduling that for the April 4th regular council meeting. So we are requesting that council set a census date of April 1st and also instruct administration to conduct a citizen survey.
Thank you, Jen. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would like to move that council instruct administration to conduct a municipal census for 2018 with a census date of April the 1st, 2018, and the council instruct administration to conduct a citizen survey in conjunction with the 2018 municipal census.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. That was
May I
amazing.
speak to the motion?
Yes, you
Your
may
Worship?
speak to that
I just
motion.
have no questions. But in preparation for tonight's meeting, I saw some really excellent ideas from the city of Kelowna on using, very similar to the process that you so wisely used in 2015 or 2013, both, and just thought they'd be worth looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel, Deputy Mayor Sobel, sorry.
That's fine, yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I'm of this very strong belief that if we're going to do a census, we should take advantage of the opportunity to do a citizen survey too. I really feel they go hand in hand, and unfortunately and regrettably, I do have one question. So aside from the census, what would the survey portion, any idea what the survey portion would cost?
Oh, the survey, honestly, the survey portion, very minimal cost. We use SurveyMonkey and we just attach a link to the end of our electronic surveys.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good, thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. Are there any other comments? You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Which brings us to item 7.3, update on taxis, which is on page 35. Will be Protective Services. Trent will be coming forward, I believe, to update us on the taxi matters. Thank you.
One of the best things about looking after and taking over municipal enforcement was I was able to make a whole bunch of new binders. And
That's always exciting.
so, yeah, I'm getting a lot of grief for my binders now. I have to color code them now. I've got so many binders. Thank you, Council. This evening, I'd like to bring you an update as far as taxis in the town of Strathmore. As you know, for some time now, we've had taxis operating since the end of January without the appropriate licensing, without the appropriate conditions that are set out in the bylaw. And so we've been active in our enforcement as well as exploring and exercising some of our legal opportunities and legal requirements inside of the Municipal Government Act. We've gone so far as to provide an order which has been presented to the owner, and they continue to still operate in spite of the fact that the order was very clear as to the conditions and requirements and expectations. That being said, some of the processes and opportunities that are outlined to municipalities in the Municipal Government Act will also be moving forward with, and are going to be prepared to take further action around the latter part of this month. I think that as far as the specifics, of course I can't get into the specifics around numbers and items and information, but we still have at least one more provision, and I believe we mentioned last week that at the previous court appearance, the operator's lawyer pleaded guilty to the 2 infractions. Those were from August and the middle part of last year, and we continue. It's not as fast of a process as any of us would like, knowing how we feel about public safety and the safety of the residents in the community and the use of the existing company, but it is the process that we need to proceed and follow.
Thank you, Trent. Are there any questions or comments, Councillor Cox? I thought you were going for the light, but, okay, sorry. Trying to be efficient.
I'm just wondering, have we had any more inquiries on anything up and coming?
I know we have a meeting scheduled this week with the expression of interest.
Perfect.
I don't want to jinx anything, and I'm
No.
keeping all my hands from fingers crossed.
That's all I wanted. Thanks, Trent.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sobel?
Thank you. And thank you for that information regarding the results, the final court results of the charges that were laid in August. Are you able to share with us what those charges were?
I know that one was smoking in the vehicle, and I believe the other one was a decaling charge, but I'm not 100% certain on the second one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel. I just have a question for administration. Is there a way we can communicate this information besides this public meeting? Can we do something with our new communications person to update the public that whatever they might be hearing, the taxis are still running illegally and that they should express, or they should be using care and caution?
Yeah.
Jen?
Your worship, yes, we could put out a general PSA, just stating that they are still operating illegally.
Thank you. I think it'd be nice just to make sure the public still really understands what's going on, what our efforts are. Councillor Bauer.
And I was just wondering whether or not there was an update on whether or not the company from Calgary or Chestermere had done any other further interactions with you in regards to bringing a taxi service to Strathmore.
Yeah,
You did?
that is the meeting later on this week.
I believe she was just reinforcing your comments.
Thank you,
Nice.
Mr.
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor Bauer.
Cox.
Doubly excited about that.
Doubly excited, yes, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Bauer, Councillor Cox. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Trent. Which brings us to committee reports. 8.1, reports from councillors from committees on which they sit. Deputy Mayor Sobel.
Your worship, I don't have a report, but I do have a question, and I guess it's to to Ms. Sawatsky. So in regards to committees of council, where there are minutes, are they still being entered into our minutes?
Yes, Your Worship, we include the minutes from your committees in the first meeting of each month.
Thank you. Then I have nothing else.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel. No other comments? Councillor Corbeil.
I,
Oh, sorry, good voice.
I do have, Emergency Advisory Committee, actually. We had our meeting, March 15th. Councillor Bauer and I sit on that one. It's actually a fairly new committee, but I think it'll go, it's already beyond my expectations anyways. We've gone over up-and-coming training things and emergency management and the Emergency Preparedness Week, the night market, we talked about that and all the things that's going on that night. No, it's really good.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. So then at this time, Councillor Bauer, sorry.
Sorry. Your Worship, I just have a couple things to add. With regards to the Strathmore Overnight Shelter, we have two upcoming events. On March 31st, a Banger Bingo. That's 7 p.m. at Legends. And what is Banger Bingo? Well, it's an engaging, interactive comedy game show based around your favorite rock anthems of all time. So I encourage people to come to that. And on April 8th, there will be a dedication service for the new Strathmore Overnight Shelter that is considered a soft launch and an opening to the public. It's at 10:30 on April 8th with a ribbon cutting and luncheon to follow. At 12:30. I also just have some congratulations for the Strathmore Municipal Library. They have been nominated for a U Award, which is a People's Choice Award, for the Visiting Library Service. And this service of ongoing library materials is offered to community members who are confined to their homes or an assisted care facility. So I'd just like to bring your attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson?
Just to follow up on Councillor Bauer's, you're all asked to vote, and councillors are notorious for having large numbers of people on their email and websites, so please send that out. It would be a huge feather in the cap of the municipal library to be in the running for that. And with regards to the Strathmore Overnight Shelter, they have also been invited to the legislature on April the 3rd.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Sobel?
Apparently, I do have a report, Your Worship. I would like to advise council and the public that the Strathmore District Chamber of Commerce will be holding their AGM on Monday, March 26th. That's this coming Monday at 5 p.m. at the Strathmore Civic Center. This is, although an AGM sounds rather ho-hum, this is definitely quote-unquote not your grandfather's AGM. It's actually going to turn out to be a taste of Strathmore and Wheatland County. There'll be a number of food distributors there, 10 in total, as well as our friends from Origins Beer Brewery will be there and selling small samples. The food will be a nominal fee for small plates of food. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'd encourage everyone to attend and come find out what your chamber has been doing lately. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel. Any other reports? Councillor Peterson?
Just one other thing. Councillor Bauer and I attended the Canadian Badlands Tourism Conference where we were invited to speak on behalf of the Western District Historic Society. It was really well received, and Strathmore showed up very, very well at that conference, and Ryan was also there, our Ryan Roycroft, and there was great learning. It was a really great experience. And
Thank you,
it's nice to
Councillor
be at.
Peterson. Deputy Mayor Sobel?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Any other reports? I'll be looking for a motion to accept the reports from councillors. Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item 9, items directly related to council. 9.1, councillor remuneration and expense policy amendment, FCM conference, page 39. And this is Deputy Mayor Sobel. Are you speaking to this at the start?
I'll make the motion first, Your Worship, if I
Okay,
could, and
thank
then
you.
speak to it. I would move that council amend section 6 of the council remuneration and expense policy 1806, which would limit council attendance at the annual FCM conference to the mayor, the CAO, and one councillor, and that the attending councillor prepare a report to council at a subsequent public council meeting within 30 days of the end of the conference. Before I go into any details why I support this, as to why I support this motion, please allow me to explain what is not my intention here. First, it's not my intention to have this change in policy, if approved, come into effect for this year. Council was acting on our present policy when decisions were made to attend FCM in 2018, and my intent would be to have this deal with 2019 and subsequent years. It is also not my intention to hinder or restrict any councillor's desire to educate themselves or become more comfortable in their role as a councillor. Nevertheless, the fact remains that, as councillors, we're responsible for the public purse, and it is irrelevant if these dollars are found in financial stabilization, in reserves, or in councillors' budgets. It's all still taxpayers' dollars. With that in mind, I once again acknowledge that as members of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM, we have a responsibility to attend the annual conference, where decisions are made, and we as members have a duty to vote. We also get to take in various educational opportunities and visit the trade show. My argument here is simple. When I compare this conference to AUMA, it is my opinion, and only my opinion, that the educational experiences at FCM falls quite short of those at AUMA. The trade show, for all intents and purposes, is very similar to AUMA's. All members of council are invited, and the vast majority usually attend the AUMA conference held in Alberta with good reason. However, the need to have all of council attend 2 conferences in 1 year seems a little excessive. I'm not saying that attendance at FCM is without any benefit. I'm just saying that I consider it not worth the cost. And with that in mind, it seems to be a prudent and fiscally responsible direction to limit the amount of council members that attend the FCM conference. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sobel. Any comments? Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly respect my fellow councillors' opinion, but having only in my short term here been to one FCM, which was in Winnipeg, because nobody else wanted to go to Winnipeg, I found the FCM conference to be probably, that particular conference anyway, to be one of the best ones that I've been at, the best one I've been at in the 4 years that I've been on council. I learned about sustainability and facility with governance, with our role as councillors in terms of how we carry out our role and evaluation. I learned about art incubators and business incubators and urban food sourcing, just to name a few. Saw some phenomenal examples of communities like Flin Flon, Manitoba, stepping up and creating templates but with their fellow Indigenous communities. And it was a heartening experience, and I've been able to bring that back and put into practice lots of what I've learned. It was extremely helpful. Having said that, I do think that this motion limits council's choice. And I think that making decisions about their own learning needs, about our own learning needs, relevant to the needs of our constituents, is something that's very, very important for all councillors. And if this motion limited the amount of money that councillors spent in any year, any given year, you know, it would have some feet, I think, but it doesn't change the actual budget amounts available to councillors. It only limits their ability to discern their own learning needs. And it becomes, for me, then it becomes something about optics, Your Worship, and other than optics, I don't know what this amendment might accomplish. I think an example or an analogy of a difference in optics, if you pee in a swimming pool, there's a very different optic than if you pee into the swimming pool. But the result is exactly the same. And that's perhaps not a great analogy for councillors going to conferences. But my point is that only the optics are different. And the budgets remain the same, and the options to go to other conferences remain the same. So I'm not in favor of this amendment, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox, I believe, is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also respect everything in which Councillor Sobel has brought forward to us, but I also am not in favor, being that I am one of the new councillors, and being that there are 4 of us, and that the term is only 4 years, who's to say that the next term there's not 5 new councillors? Then what you've done is eliminated one of them from even attending one once. Not in favor of that. I do believe that there's value in education. I do believe that each one of us should get to experience FCM and make those judgments for ourselves, as you have in the past, Councillor Sobel. I also believe and agree with Councillor Peterson in the sense that if there was a limit or dollars were changing, then I would be also in agreement. But because we're not changing the actual amounts that are possible to be spent, we're not actually doing anything to save taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I believe Councillor Corbeil was next. You lit?
It's okay.
Okay, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you. Just finishing my notes here. As I've also listened to Councillor Sobel, and as a professional in my field of teaching, I do not get told which PD events to go to enhance my classroom expertise. Instead, I get to decide on my own, with the exception of Teachers' Convention, which is mandated, growth and professional development based on my strengths and weaknesses as a teacher. This job, councillor, for the town of Strathmore, is one where each one of us brings a unique skill set to our council chambers. Some of us have been teachers, some healthcare, some legal profession, businessmen, RCMP, and since been elected, there have been a wealth of opportunities to participate in municipal government learnings. Without these opportunities, I do not think that I could be successful. That being said, I'm not in favor of this motion and believe that each councillor should be responsible for their own budget, which has been already approved and budgeted on for the 2018-2019 year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Montgomery.
So I supported bringing this motion forward, and I supported in principle any motion that is designed to save costs or at least look at saving costs. I do support bringing forward for discussion. When it was brought to me, I did bring up a couple of issues that I had with it. One being, I think that if we could tie it more directly to cost, so if FCM was within driving distance, it seems more reasonable than limiting other instances where you might want to go. And then the other issue as well is what has been brought up, and that has to do with just the individual council conference budgets, and the fact that those can be used for basically any other conference except for FCM. And then the most important one to me, I think, is just the freedom of the council to act in their best interest or to act responsibly. And so I do believe it should be left up to the councillors to decide what conferences or what seminars are going to do them the most benefit. And I trust that that will be used judiciously, and that people will be responsible in their use of their budget. And so for those reasons, I do not support the motion, but I do support, as I said, bringing the motion forward for discussion at least, and to at least discuss it publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, Councillor Corbeil, and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You okay?
I don't even disagree with a lot of what Deputy Mayor Sobel had said. The only thing being is I don't think that we should even answer to each other or limit each other. I think that we should owe it to our constituents, and if we can justify going to them, that's who we should be justifying it to. I don't think that we need to limit ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Are there any other comments? The only thing I would add is I was one of the councillors who pushed for this back in 2010, because at one time, all of council and the mayor could go to FCM, and no one, at no time did any council ever bring forward the idea to use their conference budgets to go to FCM. It was just considered a separate thing. So I think in a large way, we've limited and reduced the amount of money for that. And because of that, I think it's a good thing that council in 2018 now is willing to dip in or use their conference budgets if they see fit to go to a conference like FCM. And if the public is really upset about it, then the councillors would have to justify that to their constituents, as Councillor Corbeil said. So I have changed as far as 2010 to 2018, but mainly because the idea has come forward from this council to use their conference budgets if they decide to go to FCM. Thank you. So at this time, we have the motion on the floor. Does anyone need to hear the motion again? Then you've all heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? And the motion is defeated. Thank you, council. Which brings us to the next item, which is I seem to have lost my page here. Here we are, sorry. Council expense transparency on page 41. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a motion that I brought forward to council, and it is that council amend section 6 of the council remuneration and expense policy 1806, which would ensure that all council remuneration and approved expenditures will be published monthly, itemized per mayor and each member of council on the Town of Strathmore webpage.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Did you want to speak to your?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you.
It is my viewpoint that as a council member, I have a responsibility to my constituents, and it's very important to me that they get to see the professional development opportunities that I am taking and that I'm using at my disposal, and how I am reporting that back to council. I also believe that now that we have a web page that is up and running and that is a little more user-friendly, that we can use this opportunity to use the web page as a means to get out the information to the public of how we are spending our approved expenditures.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I believe Councillor Montgomery was the first one.
Corbeil.
Councillor
It doesn't
Corbeil?
really matter to me. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. You're welcome. This is where I find that transparency is huge, and then, like, if multiple councillors decide to attend FCM, the public knows about it, and that's where they can go directly to each councillor, and I guess they can, if they need to justify it, that's, you know, it's a part of communication, and like I said, transparency with the public, and I think that that's huge. I do support this.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Cox? Sorry, and then Montgomery. Sorry, thanks,
Thank you,
Jason.
Your Worship. I also agree. I 100% support Councillor Bauer's motion. I believe that we owe it to our constituents to be very respectful and honest and transparent. I think that this is a very nice way for them to look. They can also see and click on our names and get our telephone numbers and or our email addresses and let us know exactly how they think and what they expect from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Montgomery?
I'll just say that, similar to the previous motion, I support any motion that is designed to save money or increase transparency, and I believe that this will do a good job of increasing transparency for the public.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support this motion, especially knowing that Strathmore Town Council's remuneration is commiserate or less than that of most of our municipal and county councillors. And I think that it gives our constituents an opportunity to actually see that. I have a question of administration in carrying this out. One of the things that I appreciate about Councillor Sobel's idea in the original motion is the fact that there should be a consideration for council to report on the money that they spend. And it would be really nice if there was a capacity for council to somehow link to those expenses on our website or somehow put it on our web pages. I'm not sure, but it would just be, again, an add to our constituents to see how their tax dollars are being expended. I'm sure Matt has ideas of how we could do that. You can run, but you can't hide. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Jen, did you want to respond?
Yes, we definitely can come up with something that we can get for council to report their expenses on our website.
Thank you. And if I could just add anything, I just wanted to add one question, and that would be, does this add any excessive work to staff for administration? Do you feel like it could be a fairly streamlined process to do this kind of monthly reporting?
Your Worship, I don't think it'll be excessive. It'll just be determining how we're going to do it and setting up a procedure. And once we have that down, then we should be good.
Okay, and then the only other comment I was going to make was, is there a need for any communication to go along with the expenditures? Not necessarily what Councillor Peterson was saying, but I think there's a tendency for people to just look at the amount spent, and they may not realize that a councillor may have gone to some important conferences. Let's say at one time we went to a downtown revitalization conference in Edmonton. So Councillor A could look like he or she is spending a lot of money, yet Councillor A is also going to a lot of things to try to better the community, whereas Councillor B may not go and do many things. So it may look like one councillor is being very fiscally prudent, but is also not going to many educational things. Jen, and then we'll go to Councillor Bauer and Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Definitely, I think we can include anything, and I'm going to recommend that council bring this to committee of the whole. Administration will maybe draft something up and we can discuss the template and the format of reporting at committee of the whole.
Thank you, Jen. Councillor Bauer? Did you have a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. I'd like to look at what is presented on the webpage. It's almost like a report card. We have the letter grades, or we have the financial expenses, and then we also have the comments to go with them. And the comments help to interpret the financial expenditures. So I would accept a friendly amendment to my motion that includes that we do some reporting on our expenditures, if that is necessary.
Have the capacity to report.
Or have the capacity to report on our expenditures.
Councillor Bauer, I'm just wondering if we bring it back to committee of the whole, could we delay this motion until we, Mr. Thackeray?
Could I recommend that you refer the motion to committee of the whole for further discussion, and then you have more time? If that's agreeable.
That'd be okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And Councillor Montgomery, did you want to?
I was actually just going to ask to table it for that exact reason, so thank you.
So does that need to come forward as a motion, Jen? Okay, so we'll need to have a motion to have that tabled until the, oh,
So we can just move to table, though, right? So we don't need to withdraw it, we just move to table it, correct? So I'd move to table this motion until our committee of the whole meeting, I don't know the date offhand.
April 11th?
April 11th, yes.
Thank you. To April 11th. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We will be delaying that until the April 11th Committee of the Whole meeting. Which brings us to our next item, and that is urgent business. I believe we have no urgent business. Thank you, bylaws. Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. 10.1 Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 18-05 on page 43. Jen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 1805 is coming back to council for third and final reading. It was considered at the last council meeting, and it's just now coming back for third and final.
Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 18-05, council procedure, bylaw amendment bylaw.
Can I ask
Councillor
Can I
Montgomery.
ask for clarification, sorry? So will we be starting the regular council meetings at 6:30? Is that what this is saying?
That is what the bylaw in front of you is saying, yes.
Okay.
And that brings me, I guess, to my question. If we wanted to remain at the regular public time of 7 PM, what would be our process then? I mean, I guess we can, I think within that bylaw, within that
6:30.
bylaw, it would be a 7:30 public time start.
Your Worship, sorry, for clarification, this bylaw states that the council meeting would start at 6:30 with in-camera running from 6:30 to 7:30 and the public portion of the meeting starting at 7:30.
It's like,
Councillor Montgomery, did you want to
well,
carry
I
on?
was going to say, I believe we would like to, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd like to go with a 7 o'clock start time for the regular council, and then is 6:30 for the in-camera, and then finishing up any in-camera afterwards. So keeping the 7 o'clock if we could?
Yes, Your Worship. So if council wants to move that way, the motion has not been restated by the chair yet, so it can be withdrawn. And council would move to reconsider the resolution that moved second reading and then make an amendment to the bylaw. I can help with that.
I would like to withdraw my motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. And then we need a motion to reconsider
Second reading.
the,
Your Worship, I'll just grab the resolution number for you.
okay, thank you.
Sorry.
I think we came around early. We talked about it.
After the meeting on the email.
You're still on.
Still can't do it. There we go. So, Your Worship, the resolution number would be resolution number 0930318. So the motion would be to reconsider resolution number 093.03.18.
Thank you, Councillor.
093-0-18.
093-03-18.
Thank you, Jen, for that clarification. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, do we then move back to second reading? Yes.
Yes, Your Worship.
So I would move second reading of resolution 093-03-18.
Your worship, sorry, you would have to make a
An
motion to
amendment?
reconsider that first, and then you can move second.
All right. A motion to reconsider policy.
Resolution.
Resolution 093-03-18.
And just before we have call a vote, Jen, can I just clarify that this would then have us bringing forward the start time for public at 7? That would be in the new motion? Or you'd have to
So you would
amend that?
reconsider that motion, it would be stated, and then you would make an amendment to that motion to amend the bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. So you've all heard the motion to reconsider Resolution 093-03-18. Second, no.
No, that's just the resolution.
Thank you.
Reconsideration.
All in favor? Okay, now we're looking for an emotion to amend the bylaw.
Second reading with amendments.
Second, okay, so now we're looking to amend second reading to that bylaw.
That resolution.
That bylaw.
The bylaw.
Okay. Your worship, I recommend that council give second reading to bylaw number 1805, council procedure bylaw amendment bylaw, with the amendment of Appendix 1, meaning the meeting in camera beginning at 6:30, regular council meeting to begin at 7 o'clock, and any further in camera to be held after.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I appreciate that effort, too. You've all heard that motion? All in favor? And the motion is carried. Confused, but carried.
So now clarification, can we give third reading?
Yes. So now we need a motion
Unanimous
for it.
consent? Unanimous
Yes.
consent? Yeah, somebody go.
I'll move that we, council, give unanimous consent for a third and final reading of bylaw number 18-05.
Your worship, sorry, you don't need unanimous consent.
Because we're on the second day.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So you're just looking for a third reading.
So we're just asking for third reading?
Yep.
Okay, I will move that council give third reading to the amended bylaw 18-05. All right.
All right. Thank you, Council Montgomery. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And we've weathered that storm. Maybe. Item 12 on the agenda, questions between councilors and council statements. Councilor Peterson?
Just a second.
Oop.
Let me get to my question. I've lost my questions. I lost my questions.
Okay.
Just a second.
Could we come back to you? No.
So my first question was just a question for administration regarding Happy Cat Sanctuary, the Happy Cat Sanctuary. We're looking for some, I think, support from the town, and they had reached out, and so I guess I'm just wondering if there's going to be follow-up, because I'm very concerned. Their busy season is going to be on them very, very quickly, and I'm very concerned that if we don't have a plan in place, that they won't have capacity to move forward. And so regardless of what happens, I guess I would just like us to be in the loop.
Mr. Thackeray?
If I may, if I could speak to that, Your Worship, through the chair, just in response to Councillor Peterson. So I've actually reached out to Trent and Tracy in Protective Services just recently, funnily enough, and in order to address and look at some ways that we can be supportive. So we will certainly keep council in the loop and be bringing back something we see value, and we're gonna take care of it.
Your Worship, they said that they had some information. So knowing just how busy things have been in this office recently, I asked them to please bring it here. And so I hope that's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, thank you. I have a second question, Your Worship, or did you include the growing families information in our agenda?
Which agenda?
No, yeah, so they are here in front of us, and if anybody else has anything and you want to come back to me, Your Worship, I'll just take a second to find this, because I do not know where it is. Thank you. I am looking for, so basically, the Growing Families has an event coming up, and I sent you an email, and you said you would put it in the agenda tonight. And that's why I'm kind of lost right now. And I am having
Is that for
trouble.
April 20th? Do you remember?
I'll
Councillor
find it
Peterson?
in 2 seconds here.
Oh, I have it too.
Yeah, I think I. So what I have is this. Dear Strathmore councillors and mayor, Growing Family Society is pleased to announce they'll be hosting their third annual Family Carnival fundraiser April 20th at the Strathmore Civic Centre. And they've, one of the things that they've asked for is that we look at helping marginalized members of our community and to ask the councillors and Strathmore of Strathmore to be in attendance for the Growing Opportunities Bridging the Gap and Five for Life. And if any of us, as individuals, would be interested in making a donation for the raffle table or the online auction, or if you want to give any support to the clients, you're certainly welcome to drop that off at their office at the health center, just so people would know.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. And if any councillors or the deputy mayor and myself are able to go, if we could contact those people. I am going to be coaching the Brentwood Fighting Badgers at a grade 6 tournament that day. So if I go to that carnival and fundraiser, I may be limited as far as the time I can spend there. So if others are able to help out and find time to attend, that would be great. I'll be nearby in Strathmore High Gym, but I'll be in full tournament mode then, so I'll have the face ready to go. So we can stay in touch and contact each other for that. But thank you, Councillor Peterson. Did you have any other questions or statements? Okay, that brings us to item 13, administrative inquiries. Jen?
Thank you, Worship. There are 3 this evening. First one is from Mayor Fuel. The questions are, will the town be running a Saturday farmers market in Kinsman Park? How will vendors book? And it says, we list Fridays still at the A grounds. Question 2 is, can we reach out to WRP to add our voice to the concerns regarding Strathmore and area ambulance service? Second inquiry is from Councillor Bauer in regard to the Hillview path maintenance. It says, a citizen in Hillview has informed me that the Hillview walking path is in some need of maintenance. Some of the paths have tree roots growing into them, and others are too narrow in places to even have more than 2 persons pass each other going in opposite directions. Does the town have funds that have been allocated for walking path upgrades along the golf course and going north on Wheatland Trail? And the third inquiry is from Councillor Corbeil in regards to emergency handbook. Is it possible to look into updating the emergency magnet booklet, the one that was done with all the emergency references for the town?
I think Trent has one, right? Do you have it?
Mark, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Related to the Hillview pathway, the maintenance on that is exactly where council approved our life cycle maintenance for the pathway, and that is one of the ones that will be focused on this year. That was the actual one that my park supervisor brought forward as why we need it, and that was his justification to me why we're doing it. So yes, we have funds in the budget, and yes, it is on our radar to get done this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And there are no further administrative inquiries. Trent, did you want to speak to anything there?
I would like to, yes, please.
Sure.
The admin inquiry from Councilor Corbeil about the emergency management handbook flip chart, that the fridge magnetized one that was done about 6 or 8 years ago. We will actually reach out and try and find a sponsor. That one was sponsored by ATCO at the time. So we'll reach out and find a sponsor. It's definitely something that we can update, and we've got lots of new information. So thank you for the inquiry, and we'll get on it.
Thank you, Trent.
You didn't do an admin inquiry on the WRP?
Yeah, it was read. We're good.
You missed that?
It's been a rough evening for us. So that's it for the administrative inquiries? Jenna, okay, so I'm looking for a motion to go in camera.
I move
Councillor
to go
Bauer?
in camera.
And did you want to just state what it's for?
I move to go in camera pertaining to FOIP, Section 24, local public confidences.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried, and we are in camera at 8:07.